UK, it's 5 o'clock. For those in Brazil, it's 2 o'clock. And I'm Arthur Galamba. I'm a teaching fellow at the School of Education at King's. And I'm delighted really to have three presenters in our very first presentation of the STEM Education Hub this afternoon after the launch that we had earlier today. Um, I wanted to present the presenters. They will talk about connecting STEM research, teaching, and education in the UK and Brazil. So they have been doing collaboration research and teaching across the UK and Brazil, and they will tell us more about the experience. Lara Piccolo, uh, she is she's got like a she's been like almost 10 years in Brazil, bringing academia, policy making, and industry in research projects targeting digital inclusion, accessibility, and energy literacy. She's a research fellow at Open University, and she will start giving us some insights about her research. Then we will have Dr. Trevor Collins, also from Open University. He is the director of the STEM. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Trevor. You can correct me if you want. And at the Center of STEM Pedagogy, and he is a senior research fellow in the Knowledge and Media Institute. So he's going to also give us some insight about his work. And finally, we will have Professor Cecília Baranaukas. She's a full professor at the Institute of Computing in Unicamp, Brazil. She's been interested in human-computer interaction issues, particularly investigating different formalisms like semiotics and participatory design. So she's also going to talk through. And towards the end, we will have like a 15-minute block for questions and answers. So I hand that over now to Lara. Thank you, Lara, very much. It's wonderful to have you, the three of you, with us. And we're looking forward to seeing your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for this invitation, for this opportunity to be here and being part of the hub. So especially Arthur, for this opportunity, I'm very glad and really looking forward to attend the presentation earlier today. And it was great to see all the possibilities and everything that we can make happen through the hub. So well done for bringing this to us. So in this presentation, I'm going to briefly talk about my research connecting Brazil and in the UK. So as Arthur already introduced, and I'm a research fellow at the Knowledge Media Institute of the Open University, which is part of the STEM faculty, but is a department that is just research-based. And of course, my slides, okay, now they change. So I'll briefly introduce my research approach. And I pick up some studies I've done both similarly in Brazil and in the UK, because I think it's an interesting scenario and it's an interesting opportunity for us to put them side by side. And, you know, just to bring some insights and ideas of things we could be doing together and complementary issues or things like that. And then I'll pass the word to my guest speakers here that I'm really honored and proud to bring, Professor Cecília Baranaukas and Trevor Collins. So this is me. This picture is one of the Women in Science events that I was just doing some public engagement. And I think it translates a lot to what I'm trying to do in my career. But my background is computer science. I work in human-computer interaction. That's my research domain. I got my PhD back in Brazil at Unicamp. So I think my role here in my career and here in the hub is bringing this perspective of STEM research and education mediated by technology design. So the design is a process to empower, to engage, and to facilitate learning and education, both informally or informal scenarios. So that's my research approach, like using technology as learning tools, not necessarily as a formal education, but everyday life context. So I look at how to design a technology in terms of accessibility, engagement, and for real life scenarios, not a lab studies only, or this technology is just for experimentation, but bringing that to real context. And I think, as most of people here, I believe, I'm influenced by Paulo Freire critical pedagogy, with this idea of gathering people, with the aim to transform in a situated reality, but makes things better in situated studies. So in this slide, I just summarize very briefly things I've worked with. So back in Brazil, I worked mostly on digital inclusion, so bridging technology design with policymaking, on interactive TV, e-gov, innovative ways of providing e-gov, and also with utility providers, like how to engage people with electricity measurements. I'm going to talk more about that. But since I'm here in the UK, my studies are mostly on social media based. So using social media to build collective knowledge in global challenges like climate change, for instance, co-creating or involving users to design chatbots that are conversational agents. So both for humanitarian crises or for children facing online threats, for instance, and also for tackling misinformation, the so-called fake news. So this slide is just to illustrate that the way I tend to work is like whatever groups of people I'm working with, they are in the center of the design process, and the design articulates their ideas, their expectations, needs, and so on, with other stakeholders that are in place, including energy providers, policymakers, and the police that actually I'm working here in the UK. So that's the first project I found interesting to bring here, which use technology to connect a STEM concept, that is electricity or energy, broadly speaking. So the design of a technology that triggers new ways of perceiving that. So what is behind? What I'm talking about, how technology could do that. In the case, the technology I'm referring to is the energy tree. So it's a tangible, like a LED light tree, like a Christmas tree, that lights on when people get engaged with the topic or get engaged with an energy initiative. So both individually or as a group, the more they discuss or the more they exchange ideas on how to use and how they perceive energy, the tree is lighted on. So the tree works as a motivational aspect and is connected to an interactive system. And these people that are in this context, they use this interactive system to develop this new way to perceive and to use energy. So that's an example of the energy tree in Brazil. This is a school setup. So school children were involved in that. And the tree was, in this case, it was installed at the library of the school. And there, the interactive system was this game style, so they could play a little bit with the topic and create some sort of collective challenge that they would bring back home and discuss with the parents, with the family, new ways of using energy. And also they would discuss how the energy is actually generated, how it comes to their house. All these things that they were not very easily absorbed by these students. So they could create this challenge, and the interactive system had this idea of bringing like local metaphors that they are familiar with. For instance, trees, the digital tree that is connected to the tangible one, but trees that are familiar in the neighborhood, and the idea of if I save energy, what I'm actually doing for the environment. So in the case of Brazil, we are avoiding the flooding of a new piece of forest, for instance. So that's the whole idea, that if the group work together, we can save a piece of the forest, which is a completely different metaphor that we would apply in Europe or in the UK. So then the energy traveled to the UK. We used it again. Once again, as a feedback of engagement. Well, the scenario was completely different. We first had the energy tree in our lab, and instead of a game style application, we used like a debate tool, so people could exchange ideas on how to best use energy. And they were also provided with monitors, energy monitors, that they could actually measure things and learn from the data and transform this learning obtained from the data into things of daily life. So if you change an energy praxis in doing this bridge. And we also created a social media, like an online community, to make this translation, let's say, between data into real life praxis, which is not simple. So some lessons learned when you put these two studies side by side. Interestingly, I think bringing people to talk about energy consumption is boring, wherever you are. Nobody wants really to talk about that. And we really need something to engage, to motivate people. And actually we manage that with the tree and with all the dynamics behind how to use the gamification and so on. So everything helped to bring this topic into discussion. And also in different contexts, not only where the tree was, but back home or families and so on. So we could expand that idea. And both in the UK and in Brazil, this concept of energy or electricity is really hard to grasp. It's something that, we take for granted. And I really thought when I've done that in Brazil, I thought it could be related to education, low level of education. But it's not. I worked with many people here, with community leaders, that they were actually running campaigns of energy saving. And they didn't want to talk about kilowatt hour. And they clearly said, I don't understand. I don't know what it is. So it just made very clear that, just providing people with measurements or data or numbers or any technology, we are not changing anything. And it has to be part of a learning process, connecting that data with something that is meaningful with the real life situations they have. So I think that's the lesson learned, that is applicable to both scenarios. And we could see that equally, the challenges are the same. Definitely they are the same. So change the topic now. As I said, it's a very brief mention about this project. This is the project I'm currently working on, media literacy, or the so-called fake news. It's an European project that is, we are looking, as a project, we look for algorithms and tools to detect and how to communicate that something was considered or assessed as false to social media users. So technically, it sounds simple. It's just something you just nudge the person, show that is wrong. But we know that, the human complexity behind that is the most difficult part. So why people keep sharing fake news, or what motivates people to do that? I mean, it's really hard to understand and to tackle this complexity of human behavior. And we are fighting with something that is fabricated most of the time. They are news very attractive. They spread faster, easier. And many times they just tell what people want to hear, just confirm some bias that they have. So it's a big fight and it's not simple. And we learned that we just presenting the correct information is not the way to do. So my research question on that, my personal research question, is how to communicate these corrections and sort of convince people to stop spreading false news. So we have done a preliminary study. It was a very brief study. I published that with some colleagues from the Federal University of Paraná, Roberto Pereira, and the PhD student that we co-supervised together. It's another collaboration, Brazil, UK. So in this study, we asked some participants to associate some human values to news headlines. So they first judged whether they found it was true or false, and prioritize those news that they would potentially share or they would never share, and why. So in the screen here, I have one example of actually a headline that we used, that some hipster was confused and mistaken as an ISIS person. It was actually a true headline, a false one, but it was published in the Sunday, I think. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But what we got from this preliminary study, I think it was very interesting in the sense that equally in both scenarios, participants really wanted to avoid spreading whatever they found it could be harmful. So whenever we asked them to attach a value to a new, then, okay, so this is challenging something that is important to the society here. So perhaps I should not share. So that was very clear. But on the other hand, what was very evident in some of the data we got, the judgment, the reasoning behind, and the type of values they associated with different news were very different across the countries. So just to illustrate that, things that Brazilians see as a way to alert or raise awareness of corruption, of violence, for instance, and they consider it as something of goodwill, as a universalism that's good for everyone if people are aware that this happened somewhere else. In the UK, they saw it as a harm. So it's a completely different way of seeing that. So this silly example here, it's illegal to own one guinea pig in Switzerland. In Brazil, 13% of people only understood that was a true headline, 61% in the UK. And in Brazil, the most common rationale was related to the goodwill. If they are protecting, they don't want the animal to be alone. And in the UK, it was associated to power. So there is a police behind telling me that I can have only one animal. So, it's just to show how the interpretation can be completely different. So and so what? What do we do with this information? I think it made very clear to us that any initiative media literacy, when we are teaching people how to spot and how to act when they find misinformation, should go far beyond fact checking. Just saying like, okay, the news says that it's 30%, but the right information is 55. We are not changing. We are not really convincing people to stop. So bringing this idea that there is a potential to assert a social harm when you spread something without thinking, this could be a credibility signal that we could inform and say, well, think twice before you share. And this idea of social values could be a link to that and a way to persuade people to think before doing. So as a further future work, and actually what I'm doing now, is developing conversational agents that will create some sort of interventions and see how people would respond to that. If it changed somehow the sharing behavior, or if they would say, okay, maybe this is not correct information, there is a correction over there, or a fact checking. So this sort of thing we are going to be analyzing soon. So with this, I finish. This is just I just want to illustrate how we have some global challenges and lots of things that we could expand together, because the challenges are the same, and technology and the process of creating this technology could help us to tackle these different challenges in the UK and in Brazil. And now I'm going to pass the word to the guest speakers. So I put this bridge here because I think that's exactly what the hub is representing to me now. It's kind of a way to connect my two universes. And I'm really, really happy to bring here an honored Professor Cecília Baranaukas, which is a great inspiration to me in all the term academics and a personal aspect as well. She's one of the pioneers in Brazil in human-computer interactions, and definitely a huge influence in bringing technology to education. So she's going to tell about the projects really using technology in different contexts in context of STEM, which I think they're fabulous. And then I have Dr. Trevor Collins, a colleague at the Open University, who is a director now of the Center for STEM Pedagogy, which again has lots of inspirations. I think in the moment that distance learning became a challenge for everyone, it's a global challenge again, and they have this huge knowledge developed at the Open University with fabulous ideas to facilitate STEM teaching and research in distance settings. So thank you so much for listening. If you have any comments or anything that you want to be in touch, please, that's my contact. And then I'll pass my word to Cecília. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lara. I'm just trying to share my screen with you. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon for everyone, first of all. In respect to the hosts, our hosts, I'll try to make my presentation in English, but I will be very happy to answer questions in Portuguese if you wish, especially for all the Brazilians that are attending the meeting. First, thank you very much, Lara, and the other organizers of this event for the invitation to me to the launch of the STEM Education Hub in the week dedicated to Brazil at King's College London. It's an honor for me. I choose for my speech a bit on technology design, education, and social responsibility, concepts I have been working along my career at the University of Campinas, Unicamp, in São Paulo State, Brazil, where I live. Thus, I'm very happy in sharing with you my thoughts and some projects my research group, the Interhad, is conducting at the Institute of Computing of Unicamp. I organized this speech so that I can briefly situate my understanding for technology design, those that inspire me in education and technology, what I mean by social responsibility in design, and I hope to have some time to just illustrate some ideas with some projects. So let's start with a bit on context to understand technology design. The computing technology and our way of relating to it, to others and to ourselves, have changed a lot a long time in its still short history of computing. But if you look at this timeline representation in the screen, we see the different roles computational technology in its relation to people. From the early beginning, the machine for automating human tasks, to the personal computers of the 80s, extending human capacity with word processing and spreadsheets, for example, to more recently, the human technology fuzzy boundaries experimented with wearables, and finally, the universe of possibilities created with technology today, pervading our spaces, our bodies, life, and culture. So this is the context I used to think about technology design and human relations. The timeline of computing technology and its relations to people were also reflected in the context of its usage in education, in my view. I like to see them along 3 different moments of technology in education. First, the computational technology seen as a tool for teaching. Then, not just a tool, but a cognitive tool, when technology is seen as an object to think with, like Papert would like to use it to say. And more recently, with ubiquitous technology, the computer disappears at all in the background, leaving room, in my view, for education to come to the foreground. Thus, to think about this new scenario for technology and education, many people inspire me. But mainly these 3 you are seeing in my screen, certainly very well known by you. John Dewey, to understand the phenomenon we experience interacting with our physical and social environments. Seymour Papert, for his ideas on learning through technology construction. And Paulo Freire, of course, for his social-political understanding of education mediated by the world. All the three have many inspirational books and written texts. These are my particular choices: Experience in Education, Art as Experience from Dewey, Pappert's Mindstorms, of course, and Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed. I think they together they build a structure to think about technology, design, and education. Within this background, we understand design as a social process of joint construction of meaning, or participatory sense-making in the phenomenological terms, that manifests itself in a social, physical, digital product that mediates our interaction with the world. So I'm very concerned about this tripartite objects in this relation. This understanding is presented and discussed in this book you are seeing. I wrote with two colleagues, Cecília Martins and José Valente, to report in Portuguese results of a project we conducted on e-citizenship in the Brazilian context. So maybe it could be useful for some of you. The approach to technology design, we name it socially aware design, combines the development of interactive systems with social practices with stakeholders that I like to call interested parties. It is briefly presented also in this publication of the ACM interactions for a quick reference in English. I'm afraid we don't have time to go into detail of the socially aware design, but I can tell you that its framework involves three main components. First, the interested parties, those who potentially suffer the impact of technology, impacting it back as co-authors. Second, practical activities organized as semio-participatory workshops, semio from semiotics. We develop with the interested parties those activities to enable their participation and common ground for participation of everyone in this process. And third, the artifacts, systems, and methods developed to support the contribution of everyone in this process. Now we have also among the artifact systems and methods, the open design platform that is an online platform with the main artifacts of the socially aware design. Very useful, especially in times of pandemics we are living with restriction of the physical presence of people. Now let's just illustrate quickly the socially aware design with few projects on educational contexts. E-citizenship was a project that aimed at promoting digital literacy and e-citizenship within a low-income community of Campinas. It was conducted 10 years ago with a group of artisans and other locals and small businesses to co-design an inclusive social network system through which they could announce their goods, their social events, exchange ideas about anything, teaching each other. The figures you are seeing show socially situated artifacts, like the first up on the left, systems and practices of some workshops conducted in their place. It's the Vila União neighborhood. Results of this project have shown mainly the autonomy of the participants to understand and use, not just to participate, but to understand and use not only this particular system we were developing with them, but other social networks and IT systems as well. In the same neighborhood, Vila União, the socially aware design was also used in the context of a fundamental public school in the same time, around the same time, after a donation by the OLPC of 600 EXO laptops. The project aimed at co-designing a new school setting with the inclusion of the EXO laptops into the formal and informal children's education. The whole school community participate was involved along the process, along the project. Students, their parents, the school principal, pedagogical coordinators, teachers, servants, among others. And this book you are seeing in the image in the middle, in the center, was written in Portuguese with the same school community and was also co-designed with them. All the book was co-designed using the same principles of the socially aware design. The book reports the whole experience every stakeholder or interested part has had in the experience. The book is reachable through this site in the bottom. It's an EDIS portal. You can download it freely. The next few examples are in the context of ubiquitous scenarios of technology, and they are part of a still ongoing project, research project, the Socioenaction systems. The Socioenaction project is being developed and conducted with partnership of 3 different institutions: an exploratory science museum, a hospital to treat face defects, and an educational space for children that occurs within our campus. Those are the children of the employees of the university and some students' children as well. With them, we design and build artifacts of technology and study the socio-enactive experience in the constituted scenarios. Tangitime is an installation designed to address the concept of deep time, the time for geological processes in a scale of billions of years, a very abstract notion of time for children. The installation was exhibited in a public event in the Geosciences Institute at Unicamp and in workshops of the Exploratory Science Museum, that is our partner in the project. It is composed by a tabletop and objects representing different geological eras, both constructed with embedded technology and capable of communication. The objects are a meteorite, a volcano, a dragonfly, and 2 dinosaurs interact among themselves and with the table as people manipulate them on the geological era that is also projected on the table. A little bit about the architecture, but I don't have time to go into details of the installation, but I'd like to say everything was built. The tabletop, the objects with embedded technology, the process of communication, everything. Installation makes it possible to perceive the effects of the actions of this on the scenario. by people, among people, by the table, by the objects. Everyone perceiving the actions in the scenario. For example, when two dinosaurs are at a certain distance of one another and in the corresponding geological era, their eyes light on, change color, and they emit a sound of fighting, for example. Also, we have some avatars of the physical objects in the corresponding action and visual animation in the image that is projected on the tabletop. For example, a volcano in eruption. With Tangi Time, children can build their concepts of deep time by interacting with the physical, the digital, and the social elements that we understand coupled in the installation. Just a quick mention of some other projects, very briefly. TechMemory Game is a version of the classical memory game. This time we're working also with auditory memory. When the child, for instance, passes the smartphone over the card, the NFC tagged identifier is sent back to the Android application that performs the associated action. For example, reproducing an audio file, a recorded word or the sound made, for example, by an animal, if the game is on animals. And the important thing is that children participate of this design as well, and they themselves recorded the audio feedback for the game elements as part of their work in this project. LCFV is another environment for not yet literate children to experience reading as a social activity. A glove, as you can see in the first figure, with built-in technology is used to read objects scattered in the environment to unravel a proposed mystery, for instance. You can change the narrative as well. Information in the environment is heard by a computer, which makes inferences, trying to help the group through an avatar that talks to them. So they can experience reading as a social, not as a solitary activity, but as a shared activity with their peers and with the system. TAPREC, the tangible, it's a tangible programming environment. Everything also built from zero, which controls the actions of a robot, MBOT robot, in different proposed scenarios. In this environment, programming also is not a solitary activity, but it's done by the group, in this case, 4 to 5 years old children, work together with actions coordinated by themselves, not by a previous plan or a previous script. This other project is showing a robot embedded with sensors, the same robot, MBOT, that is characterized as something else. And it is used in this scenario by groups of children as a form of embodied action towards accomplishing a task proposed by a narrative. In this case, the narrative proposed by them and worked during the regular classes was the Little Red Riding Hood. It not looks like, but it was. The children's actions did not follow a predefined script conducting the robot, for instance. Instead, their joint and coordinated body actions are constructed along the process of interacting with the robot, but not only with the robot, with their peers as well. They are working together towards a proposed task. In solving a problem, for example, conducting the robot to some place in this floor, they do not follow a predefined plan or script. Instead, the plan is constructed with the coordinated actions of their bodies along the path. So I think it's another way of considering the ubiquitous technology environments in the context of educational processes. Synthesizing and concluding, first, we acknowledge a systemic and social situated vision for the design and use of technology for education. In this view, technology must emerge from layers of formal and informal science of a school, as I represented in the left, which is situated within a specific social group with its quotidian life, beliefs, and culture, as well as its norms, legislation, and everything else. We believe the school must be put à altura de seu tempo, up to its time, as once said by Paulo Freire in an encounter with Papert in São Paulo. And I envisage the technology behind the scenes in this way, for the education to be in the forefront, not letting the technology to keep the attention of people. And that's it. Thank you very, very much. I'm very happy to answer questions if you have, especially in Portuguese. Thank you. I stop sharing now.
So I think the best way to proceed now is Trevor, the presentation, and then we get the questions together in the end.
Trevor, thank you for your note. Just we understand if you need to go through all the, I mean, across your presentation. I will just hand over to you, and then you see the best way to work it out. Thank you.
Okay, great. So let me bring up a few slides, and I've got a little section now at the end to talk a bit about some of the ways in which we're using technology at the Open University. So I'll explain a bit about the context, a bit about the work that we do here, and also maybe the ways in which we enable people to engage with education and develop a scholarly approach, a scholarship approach within higher education, specifically in STEM education at the Open University here. So that's the focus for my last section now. And I'm very interested in ways in which we can collaborate with other institutions. The idea of having a STEM education hub as a way to connect with other groups is just a fantastic opportunity. So that's quite excited to have the opportunity here. Let me bring up these slides, and as I said, we'll talk through some of this work that we've been doing here. Okay, so there we are. Let me make sure that I can see things still. Great, so maybe Lara, just give us a thumb if the slides are coming through there for people. Okay, I guess, oh, wonderful. Fabulous. Okay, right. So my name is Trevor Collins. I'm a senior research fellow, and a bit like Lara, my background is around technology. That's my area of research, and I've been at the Open University for quite a while. I came there in the 90s to do a PhD, and I've said this. I look at the use of technology in teaching and learning, and through doing that, I've done quite a lot of research projects involving our university, involving the Open University where I'm based, and through that, I've got involved in a thing called a scholarship center. This is STEAM Center for OU Center for STEM Pedagogy. So it's specifically looking at ways in which we can apply technologies and maybe use those as a way of supporting teaching and learning. And the context for us is we're a distance learning university. Okay, so our students don't come on campus. There's quite a lot of them, and we operate at a scale that enables us to manage that technology and deliver online. Okay, so a lot of our experience is supported through online. We also have people that come together for residential centres when we're able. Currently, that's difficult, but there's a blended approach to our teaching and learning. I think is a nice way to contextualize it. So there's a couple of links and stuff in the slides here, and hopefully these can be available as well afterwards. If people do want to get in touch, it's really good to do that if possible. Okay, so I'll explain a little bit about the Open University, and it's so nice to be a part of this group, a part of this network. But it's just to give you the context of the work that I'm going to describe. The Open University, it's currently the distance learning university. It's spread throughout the UK. We also have students across Europe, and actually there's over 7,000 international students. We're probably a bit bigger than a lot of the other universities across Europe, just because of the mode of delivery. Okay, so a lot of our students are in employment already, and they're studying maybe in order to learn a new topic or to change a career, or maybe move into a career that they're interested in. Okay, so the motivations, the opportunities that students have in terms of their time and what their goals are maybe a little different than maybe face-to-face institutions and other forms of learning, okay? Nonetheless, especially in the current context around the COVID pandemic, a lot of institutions are coming. A lot of institutions. I just noticed a little message in the chat there for me to speak slower, so apologies for rushing ahead there a little. But a lot of institutions are engaging and embracing opportunities for online learning. So and we're really keen to support that kind of process and work with other colleagues, because the Open University have been doing this for just over 50 years. The Scholarship Centre that I'm talking about today has been running for 10 years. But the learning from that is that we're always learning. Technology is always changing. The way in which people learn and engage with topics is constantly changing. So we only ever benefit from talking about the work together and engaging with one another. So that's a little bit about the context. Let me move through to the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. Now, this is a large international community with lots of colleagues engaged across Brazil and many other places. You know, and this is a nice thing where scholarship is an approach. It's a way of engaging with teaching and learning that takes an evidence-informed aspect. And the goal here is that everyone can engage with this in an appropriate way for their role. And the benefits for different groups. You know, for students, it's trying to systematically evaluate and improve the quality, the sort of quality enhancement aspect. For different disciplines and institutions, it's really helpful to be able to evaluate and embed teaching and learning in a way that's recognized. So Scholarship of Teaching and Learning is a great way for us to evidence our professional practice and get our institutions and get our teaching quality recognized. Certainly within the UK, there's a national scheme for these kinds of things, and I know it's the case across many other institutions and other countries as well. And then the last around the professional practice for teaching. So hopefully you get a sense there. Scholarship is an approach. It's an evidence-informed way of teaching and learning. We want to learn from others, and we also want to do educational research that can improve and share that back out to other colleagues as a way to learn together. Okay, so what does that mean for the Open University? Every institution tends to do this, but the structure is slightly different. So at the Open University about 10 years ago, a network of people got together for this, and I think it's really quite interesting to see how these communities develop and evolve over time. Part of the institution is to try and focus on strategically important areas, so national issues and things like that, but also for scholarship, for it to be practitioner-led. So for us, that's our lecturers and also our students and our tutors. So we're getting information as to what challenges people are having in different subjects. You know, so in mathematics, there's maybe certain topics around mathematics notation and representation. In chemistry, maybe there's issues around how we support the practical work online and at a distance and things like that. So there are different issues that come up, and from that, then people come up with proposals. And that's the idea, is that the people involved in this work propose some projects that they can investigate over maybe a 2-year period. And then through this centre that I mentioned, this is STEAM Scholarship Centre, we support that work. So we provide, calls for projects. We also provide some professional development support and things like that, and opportunities like the conference that you can see in the images there, where we bring that community together to share the work, okay? And then obviously go through into international and national conferences as well. Structure for it, in our institution, we have a governance is structured through an advisory group, but also through a student reference panel. So maybe this aligns to some of the aspects around teaching and education that have already been brought up today. That thing of involving students, involving the learner in a partnership, ways of working together that I think are very important, very key. So we meet with our students, a representative group of students, help shape, and we're accountable to the students for the work that we do. And we have a scrutiny panel as well that reviews stuff, as well as a small team that coordinate the work. And within our faculty, for the STEM faculty, there are a set of 6 schools, 6 different discipline areas, and with a structure to work with them. So it's a coordination of work across a large faculty in our case. The things that that tends to then bring through, as I mentioned, a lot of the focus is around empowering and enabling people to engage in higher education, teaching and theory. So to develop that work and to make a contribution into the discipline-based educational research relevant in their area. So we support that and the development for it. We also link into ways in which we can encourage students as partners. So this collaborative working with our students to understand the issues and challenges they have, and to involve them as researchers in our projects. So they can facilitate focus groups, or work with students to come up with the questions that are important to them as they're studying, and then support and work with them to do some projects that can give us some evidence to inform what we do. So currently across the centre that I mentioned, there's been over 200 projects in the time of the centre, and there's about 100 currently running. So it gives you a sense of scale. I mean, we have over 35,000 students and several thousand staff that are involved in teaching and learning at the Open University for STEM specifically. Okay. Now, so I've added in there a little Wordle example that illustrates some of the projects from the last project call that we did. I'm just going to flip over to our web page here and bring up the website for the centre. What I'll do also is I'm going to paste into the chat area here. Let me just do that. Hopefully I'll just paste it into the chat area there for everyone that's around. A little link to this website. If people are interested in any of this work, please, there's a 10 years worth of projects that you can pick in, but I just thought I'd bring up a couple as a way to illustrate some of the work. Ways in which we do our project work is through these project pages, and as a project runs, all of the resources that are developed are added in, and you get an update on what people are doing. So for example, this is a project that's been running just less than a year, just over a year, but it's looking at ways in which students are making use of extensions. So for our assessment, some people are running out of time, so they get an extension, but that has an implication for the onward study. So what are the implications of that? Who's making use of these extensions and things like that? So it's an interesting project because it came up in collaboration with our students. Really interesting in terms of the questions that are asked. Well, it's not just who engages with these extensions, but what are the implications for their learning. So we found out that, for example, a lot more of our students with disabilities make more use of the extensions and are maybe a little time poorer than some of the other students, because of some of the times that it takes sometimes our disabled students longer to access some of the materials and things like that. So quite an interesting piece of work that's giving us insights into how we provide and support students. I'll do a couple of these examples. I'm not going to go on too long, but I've got a couple just to share. And as I said, there's an awful lot of them. Here's another example where there's online journal clubs. So for a distance learning university, I'm sure a lot of your institutions, you have journal clubs or ways in which you encourage students to engage with the research in their subject area. In the UK, this is done through journal clubs quite often, and for a distance learning university, that's not an easy thing. The social dynamics, the social aspects of learning, which Cecilia was mentioning before, are really key for us to kind of support that for part-time students at a distance. So we've been facilitating that through these clubs where colleagues and students can engage with the research in their area, and they've actually shown to be incredibly popular. So, and the process, So some of the, in this particular scholarship project, the nice thing with this is they've identified the method, they've created a set of resources, and they've shared those as well. So there's a final report, a little presentation on it, they've made a video, and they've also shared their resources that they've developed. So the facilitators, guides, advertising, all the different aspects that are involved in this process that they've gone through, it's a nice way in which they can share that work. So putting it up in a public space for other institutions as well as other people within our university. I'll just mention one more of these. I had a few set up, but I'll just, in interest of time. The last one here that I'll mention is around peer mentoring. And again, this is maybe a process that is common in other institutions where students can engage and support one another, the whole peer mentoring process. So for us, with our students at a distance, they don't always meet socially. And there isn't always the social interaction and contact between students. But what we do find, we've implemented this buddy scheme, and now it's been scaled up to one of the schools. Nearly every module in our Earth, Environment and Ecosystem Sciences school, so the environmental scientists and earth scientists, within that school, this scheme has been rolled out quite widely now based on the findings from this scholarship project, where we're finding that students are engaging with one another, they're very willing and interested to support one another, those that volunteer for this scheme, and it gives them some credit, some aspects that help differentiate their CV. It helps show some of the work that they've been doing as they go through. So quite an interesting project for us. It's helped us to develop ways in which we get recognition for our students' participation when we work with them as students as partners, and it's an interesting way to develop that at scale. So hopefully, from some of those examples, there is a sense of, or you can start to get a sense of how we're working to take a scholarly approach, to look at the evidence that informs how our teaching is working, and maybe ask questions around what's not working and why, and maybe what are the interventions that we can do to improve it. And when we make an intervention, like in some of these examples, what evaluation can we do that will actually give us evidence to show that it's been effective? So that's the example. As I said, the link that I put in there will give you a source for a bit more information. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was, as I said, we have a 10-year anniversary, and we've just done a recent publication where we summarize some of the key work across the work that has been done. So this project that I mentioned, which is a very small sample, but here's another report. It's an open access thing. Everyone can have a look at that, where we've distilled down over 8 areas of work, the different scholarship activities that have been taken out. So some of the key findings, some of the key impacts that have been coming through in the work. So again, I'll just very quickly, indeed, hopefully, just bring that up. Let me just see if that's going to play ball today. Here we go, my web browser is just learning to find it. Hopefully it's going to come through. My internet's maybe a little delayed with being on Zoom at the same time, but it's hopefully helpful just to give you a quick overview of this. It's a very simple, just a little report that's easy to access, introduces the center, what we've been doing, ways in which these project highlights areas are the kind of work that we've been doing. And then it's just a couple of pages on each that summarize and give you links through to those reports, those pages that I was just showing you before. So we've looked at assessment and how that's delivered, things like enabling transitions into higher education, how we support transitions between levels within higher education, and enabling students to maybe make an earlier start if that improves their progress as they study with us, and so on. Things like diversity and inclusion, how we're engaging different genders, across disability support, and aspects like that. Right, so that's hopefully helpful. I don't have any further things in terms of slides and stuff. I'm hoping that there will be a little time for a bit of discussion and questions. It's really nice to get the opportunity to share some of this work and hopefully hear a bit more around some of the work that other colleagues are involved in. So let me stop the slides and we can get a little discussion, I hope. Thank you very much, everyone. Lara, do you want to, or Arthur? Yeah.
Thank you, Trevor.
Great.
Thank you, Lara. Thank you, Cecilia. It's absolutely fascinating. We cannot hear, but there is a round of applause right now going on, right? You can think of how many, 100 people going for wonderful round of applause for all of you. Amazing job, and it's really, really fascinating work. I really can't wait to read a bit more about what you guys are doing, because this is really interesting, and I'm definitely interested in learning more about it. I would like to invite everyone who is watching these presentations to write down questions, so that the presenters could answer your questions. If nobody asks questions, of course, I have 1 or 2 questions to make, but I would rather wait for you to come up with questions. I mean, or in the meantime, I could just throw at the 3 of you a very quick question about how we could see. I know you touched on that already, but how you could see having now the STEM Education Hub, how this could give all of us a to facilitate collaborations across the 2 countries. What would you like to see in the hub that you currently don't have? Either information, either facilities, either networking, what it is that you think could contribute to the work you could do across the 2 countries.
Okay, shall we start?
Yeah.
Very quickly, I think the hub is going to be a great opportunity as a window for us to get to know what has been done, and the state of the art being built in completely different contexts, in which lots of things that we can learn from each other. And if you think in many circumstances, UK or Europe or the entire world is now absorbing problems that developing worlds are tackling for ages, like digital inclusion, for instance, that now is a far more evident problem here, that look, it was something sort and it's not. So this sort of exchanges, things that I believe that Brazil is far ahead in terms of inclusion, not ahead of solving the problem, but how to tackle the problem, how, the initiatives to work on that. So I believe the hub can be this great window that you can find what you need and bring things to the different contexts and then develop them together.
Thank you, Lara. That's great. I don't know if Trevor or Cecilia want to add anything. Please feel free to.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that thing of, I mean, it's so lovely today just to get a sense and start to connect with people, because I think, some of the things that come through is that the different kind of contexts that we're working in, that we're studying in, they bring different approaches, and I think for me that's one of the richest things that we could get through this hub. It's really it's an outstanding opportunity to share different perspectives, different pedagogies, different approaches. I mean, I think there's from the work that Lara and Cecilia shared, there's so much common interest, common understanding, common enthusiasm for kind of social learning, for transformative learning, for engaging in a way that really matters. So I think the hub could be a great opportunity for us to share through that. So thank you. And my Portuguese is terrible. I have no Portuguese, sorry.
So that's fine. Thank you, Trevor. We're very lucky to have translators. I have a few questions from the audience, just to remind ourselves. We were given 15 extra minutes for Q&A, so that's great. We have 12 more minutes to go. Hopefully we can cover a bit more questions. So there is one question from Luis Sehal from British Council, that's directed to Professor Cecilia. He says, Cecilia, I wonder whether you could briefly discuss the main contributions of Brazil to global discussions around tech and education. Besides that, how do you think decisions in education could be sorry, just moved my text. Global discussion around tech and education. Besides, how do you think decisions in education could be informed by more evidence-based studies projects such as the ones you presented?
Thank you for the question. Well, I think that our tradition in computers in education is very far away. I think that Brazil was one of the first, I think it's one of the first to use, for instance, or to understand the use of computers in education as a construction, as a learning, as a way that children construct meaning after doing things with technology. We had this relation to Seymour Papert since the 70s. So it's a long time ago that Brazil has had some this approach. I think this approach that is not the consideration of technology just as a tool, but it goes very behind this, very far from this. And well, we had also the other side, that is Paulo Freire, who is our patrono, I don't know how to say it in English, is our patrono of education in Brazil. So I think that the legacy of Paulo Freire is very, very merged to the way people consider the social issues we face here, especially trying to do something in education. Regarding the difficulties, you know, Brazil is a continental country in terms of dimension and people involved, and differences in terms of socio-economic issues and everything else. So it is very, very difficult to consider the practical terms of helping in some way. My particular effort has been in not in the government. I'm just from the academy, and I'm trying to do my best in terms of researching and trying to figure out ways of constructing technology for another way of understanding education. Even sometimes we have some projects with the government, but still in the academy context. So I'm not the right person to make any judgment regarding governmental practices and issues like that. But I'm very positive. I'm very optimistic in that we can do something. So the project we are conducting, despite being limited to the academic world, even though they are projects that have the real people engaged in it. So the dimensions is very complicated to deal with, but everything we have done, we are doing with people from the low-income communities, for instance, and some of those things I think can reflect on the practices, more formal practices in municipal and state and federal government as well. That's my hope. I don't know if I answered the question, but
Lovely. Thank you, Cecilia. Thank you very much. I have still a few more questions. I think I will cover perhaps 2 or 3, and then I'll leave you with how we'd rather respond to them. So, okay. So very quickly, Roberto Pereira has said, I mean, taking into consideration the pandemic, is there anything that we could start doing across UK and Brazil right now together? He's very keen to do something. There is Claudia Carvalho is interested in the use of technology in rural areas, in remote areas. Also, Talita Alves has asked about. I think it's a question actually directed to you, Lara. She says, apublica.org published that Brazil has the second largest public using apps able to change faces of persons in the video, thus potentially producing sophisticated fake news. Oh, I think it's like you can tweak videos and then making a fake news. It's like deep fake, I suppose, isn't it? Deep fake.
Yeah.
What could we do to approach to these kind of sophisticated fake news? Yeah, so these are the questions that if you want to address any of those, that'd be great. We have 5 more.
Yeah, I can quickly answer that about the deep fake. I think it has becoming really, really hard to distinguish even for the machine. The deep fake is really challenge technology. So that's why I believe, and not only my opinion, but many international organizations, that is not a matter only of technology, but literacy, media literacy, developing the sense of who sent that to me, what is the purpose behind, and you try to teach people how to spot different credibility signals. That is not only the content, but other things that are around what you receive on social media. Then you can have a critical thinking and evaluate yourself if that's something you should believe or not. So I think that's my answer, is not only rely on technology, but people, investing on people. Because technology is going to get better and better.
I don't suppose there will ever be any artificial intelligence more intelligent than the human intelligence, right?
Exactly, yeah. And technology is always going to be used for the good and the bad. So, as anything else in life. So we have to learn how to do that.
I don't know if Trevor or Cecília want to add anything to these, or I can read all the questions.
Sure. I mean, maybe some of the questions were around, things that we could start to identify, to opportunities to work together and things like that. I mean, I think there's maybe through the hub and stuff, we might start to identify some common challenges, because I often think that it's not just the subject area or the teaching approach that we've got, but sometimes there's some common challenges that we have. For us at the Open University, it's enabling social communities online and people to engage in a social way of learning and things like that. For us, it can be a challenge, and it can be difficult to make that equally available to all students, because of background or interests or time or family pressures or whatever the other things can be. So enabling people to participate in a way that's equal and stuff like that is quite a challenge. I mean, access to technology, familiarity with it, capacity to engage with some of these things. These are real challenges, and I'm sure there are challenges in other contexts as well. But maybe coming together is a good way to start looking at these things. So maybe drawing up some issues or challenges or aspects might be a nice way to take further steps. And it is true, to be honest. We can do only what we can do, and we can't create more hours in the day or things like that. But I think starting with things that are and finding common interests is a really nice way. So maybe some of these things could be sort of next steps.
Cecília has just written, yes, that's the idea. Not only being consumers of technology, but producers of technology as well. Can I ask you one question? I mean, in your view, is research in technology and education currently mostly about seeing education as an enabler, like as Cecília was mentioning, like having the technology working behind the scenes and enabling us to teach better? Or is it more focused on saying helping students in schools to understand the impact of technology in their lives? How do you see, what's the main focus right now in technology at the moment? How do you, if any?
Yeah, go Cecília.
No, go on.
I think it's interesting, the connection between technology and learning and how we bring it in, particularly in schools. I mean, Cecília, you're well placed for this. But sometimes some of the work that we've done, we see it as for some individuals, it's a motivator to engage with topics through the technology, and for others, it's not. It's the topic that brings them. So there are different attractions and different interests, and sometimes you can enable people to learn about the technology and facilitate their use of technology because of their interest and their motivation to study a particular thing of interest. Dinosaurs in very young children is a very common interest and things like this. So it's really nice in ways in which we can do this. So I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure exactly which one comes first. I think the key thing is developing and encouraging and promoting curiosity. For me, this is the fundamental thing that if we can promote at all stages in life, and we're never too old for curiosity, is a good thing. Cecília, maybe I'm sure you'll have a better informed answer. Sorry.
Education as an enabler, I think. Would you like me to answer in Portuguese or in English? I don't know about the audience.
We've got some English speakers in the audience. I don't know if you are prepared to translate from Portuguese into English. So maybe it's better to keep.
Okay.
That'd be great.
So I see technology in education as an enabler, as you said, Mr. Galamba, because as an enabler, you can open the ways for people to understand the role of technology in society and in their lives. So I think technology is not just an instrument to evolve in some operationally speaking. But I think that technology can be more than that. And if it is an enabler, in the sense of being an enabler, I think that all the other possibilities come together. So my first concern is not consider it just as a tool. It has to be more than a tool. Even when we consider a cognitive tool. I think that the relation of people with technology will impact a lot our very, very close future. It is already impacting, but in the future, it will be much more impacting. So I think it's an enabler.
Wonderful. Thank you, Cecília. Thank you. I could ask many more questions. I'm sure many more people would do the same. It was a wonderful presentation. I can tell you many people in the chat box have been saying, "Oh, that was wonderful discussions. We need more of these." Yeah, congratulations. So that was great. I enjoyed so much. Thank you, Trevor and Lara and Cecília. Unfortunately, I really need to bring our meeting or presentation to an end. Thank you. I'm sure we will have more opportunities to have more, perhaps larger, longer seminars with more people presenting and roundtables to get these thing back onto the stage, because we really need to talk more about it. I'm very interested personally on these, and I'm sure many people are as well. So a big round of applause to all of you again. Again, you can hear all the applauses. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lara, for organizing everything. It was wonderful of you.
Thank you.
Great. And I hope to see you soon again. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.